tuning in. I wanted to talk a bit about narcissism in this video, and narcissistic personality disorder. Now, there's a slight difference. There are people that have narcissistic behavior and tendencies, but do not have narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. And NPD is, described in different ways. NPD occurs initially through a child's developmental years, around 3 or 4 years old, when they don't develop the paths in their brain that create empathy. This is the most serious form of narcissism. Now, the whole world is full of narcissism. It's all about self. And as far as NPD, it actually is a mental disorder. I've read information that calls it brain damage. I think that could be a borderline description. It could possibly be brain damage because the brain didn't develop normally in early years. So, depends on how you classify brain damage. So I'm not going to get dogmatic on it. I'm just going to relay, some of the understanding that I have on it. Basically, anybody who is narcissistic has an inflated sense of their own importance or a grandiose view of themselves, which is normally driven by a very fragile self-esteem. And these people have great difficulty in being criticized. I'm not going to necessarily focus on the aspects of narcissism. What I want to bring to you is narcissism is, I got bugs, fruit flies. Narcissism is in stark opposition to what we are supposed to be as followers of Messiah. And you can go out there and look up narcissism and stuff like that. I'm not going to get in depth, but I'm going to expose it at a spiritual level. And there's a lot of importance in that. It's good to understand some of it, but better to understand the scriptural aspects of what we are supposed to become. Because now, NPD, there's no cure for it. They can't cure it. It's treatable, but not curable. Now, somebody that has narcissistic traits can come out of that. So, not all is lost. And Scripture tells us how to do that. Now, back then, they didn't know the word narcissism. But the Bible teaches us to be selfless. See, narcissism is all about oneself. But to serve Messiah, to serve the Father in heaven, is to be selfless. So that's the direction we need to set our focus on. We don't have to go into great lengths studying narcissism. It's good to understand some of it. And I brought some of the high points out about it here. Maybe some things people didn't know about NPD and stuff like that. But the most important thing is to focus on the Father's love. We can focus on a lot of things around us. Focus on the narcissistic traits people have, things like that. And this world is a very narcissistic world. And narcissism raises its ugly head in many personalities. Some personalities are less prone to it than others. There's one personality in particular that a person with that type that is average is probably the worst of the narcissist, and in many cases NPD. That's a type described as the status seeker. And that description fits them very well. In Messiah, we're not to be seeking to make a name for ourselves. But the people in this world, the worldly people, which typically are narcissistic, seek after that. You know, I was taught, get out there, do this, make a name for yourself. That's the stigmatism we're given to by this world, right? And many times by our parents. And but that's not the focus, because if it is, then we're after the things of this world. Messiah rebuked some people in his time and said, "You strain in a gnat, swallow a camel." And that's typical of people in this world, or narcissistic behavior, is that, we take in whatever we want, what we want to do, but we look at other people criticizing them. And that's a very hypocritical stance. That's condemned in Scripture. So, if you understand narcissism, when you read the Scripture, you understand these people that were like that. That's condemned in Scripture. Now, I'm not somebody that's unknowledgeable in personalities and disorders. Let me mention this in this video, because when I was young, before I started anything, I went to a pastor counselor for a year, and I spent time with that man to learn about myself. That's where it has to start. It has to start with ourselves. We have to learn about ourselves. I wanted to know about me. Do I have a personality disorder? Am I normal? What is normal? Things like that. I wanted to explore that. I went through that. Fortunately, I don't have a personality disorder. So I was relieved after going through that. I went every other week for a year. I couldn't afford to go every week. And I went every other week for as long as I needed, if that would have taken 2 years. But one of the things I realized, that in my thinking, I misunderstood a lot of things. I know I was affected in this world. And one of the things I realized before going, I thought, if I can understand, where my problems come from, I can deal with them. I understood a bit, and it was interesting. I think Messiah must have been leading me, because when I went there, one of the first things the pastor said to me was, if you can understand where your problems come from, you'll be able to deal with them. I thought, maybe I was on to something. So the Father was working on me. So I put myself through that. We all have to examine ourselves. That's where the rubber meets the road. Get in front of the mirror every day. I still do it. Just because I went through that time doesn't mean, I'm at the top of the food chain or any such thing and, got it all under control. I continue to do that because it's a journey. We continue until Messiah returns. And even that, we still won't be as holy as the Father, right? But that's where I started to understand life. And I was so intrigued with that experience. I started studying psychology myself from a Christian author. And spent a lot of years, several years, going through learning personality types and enough to understand people. That's one of the reasons I'm here doing this work, making these videos, writing my blog, developing the sites that I am. I first worked on me, what's inside here. We all have to do that. Get rid of the narcissism. Basically, getting rid of self. Scripture tells us, die to the flesh. We have to be selfless. That's the beginning of things. And then we continue doing that. We find out more as we go through the years. Continue working on this. No matter what we do in this world, no matter, where we're at, what we think, we have to work on this. Crucify this. And then pick up our cross or stake and follow Messiah. We have to be selfless. Because unless we are, we could have narcissistic tendencies we don't know. Focus on being selfless. Let go of the wheel. That's the title of my blog. Let go of the wheel. It's one of the first things I started with. That domain. I've had that domain since end of 95. November 95, I believe it was. Or 96. It's been a long time. But anyway, that's what we have to focus on. That's what Scripture tells us. I went through a lot of years of reading these books, learning a bit about personalities, some psychology and stuff. Then I got into the Scripture with that thinking and tried to understand the teaching in there and correlate that with what I learned. And it opened my perspective. It opened my eyes more to the understanding of human behavior contained in Scripture. And I'm going to exhort everybody watching this video to seek after that, whatever you know, because I've known people that studied psychology that hardly, have any knowledge at all, and they think they know everything, and they're some of the worst false accusers you could ever meet. Man's psychology holds many truths, but don't get focused on it. I use it to learn mostly about personalities so I can get to know people. Scripture talks about two different temperaments. It's in Scripture. Maybe eventually I'll get into some of that. But I would say focus on Scripture. Learn what the Word of Elohim tells you to do as far as growth. It's perfect. Because man's psychology, what does it do? It teaches us according to our personality. The Bible has one answer for every person, and it works perfectly. It's basically bugs again. It's basically seeking the Father's love, because we all have fears, right? We all have some kind of fears. The perfect love casts out all fear. When I was young, I had fears. I know I did. And I thought, how do I get rid of these? Do I try to focus on the fear and deal with that? And I finally realized, no. Focus on love. Searching through Scripture. And this was before I even studied psychology. Man's psychology. And in understanding that, the Bible gives us perfect answers. So, if you do study psychology, you do study personalities, just use that to broaden your understanding. Don't use that as a guideline to perfection, because it's not. Perfection is only found in Messiah. Perfection is only found when we lay down our life, when we love, when we forgive, everything like that. There's more to it. I may have to continue this in another video. But this is the gist of narcissism and coming out of that, focusing on the Father, focusing on His love that causes us to become selfless. Thanks for watching. More later. Please subscribe. May Messiah bless you and guide you in all that you do.